Hello everyone, it's General AI Space-Time Career Communication Settings. Welcome everyone. It's amazing to see everybody in applications. So today's Thursday. After class, I'm going to set up another line communication setting, get notifications when I go on. I'll be doing it on my phone, and it'll be strictly just for Q&A, okay? So let's get into that formation location of settings, get your questions answered and all calculations. So I really like to talk more about Occam razor calculation is the best solution. You know, is the simplest terms. We have to formulate that and understand how to use that through all calculate modified through personalities, how it formulates in all levels of you, all calculation to a system, so it doesn't play mind tricks on you in any way in that formation location. Know exactly what you're seeing through intent, because you can get travel mechanism, line connections, and mirror resolution screens or in calculation position of programs. See through perception, but see something else. Okay? So there's a lot of communications when you come in your personalities, is knowing exactly how to break it down. Each emotional system is inside you. So you have to really understand how to identify that in set locations. All right. So it's important to understand how to use that. Right? Because it's about dealing with your emotions, balancing your emotions. Quiet the mind. Try it. Quiet the mind calms the soul on any level, on any situation. Because if you can't control the mind and travel, how will you ever going to understand anything through emotional system, your personal traits inside you? Okay. All right. So in track line communication, setting a high position of its operation, we're going to go through symbolism. This is my conceptual lines of calculation, how we formulate that. So it's really understand how do we communicate to that level. So in that track line conditionalized system, it's about creating the algorithms, really understand how to use the letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. Now, the track to its communication line setting is really understand how to use all communications to your awareness. Awareness and consciousness is coming to you now. Now, the cerebral and its cortex and its set lines is going to set up a mystical line division. Now, that division opens all levels of calculations. All right. So you really have to get balance with your emotional system. Okay. Because it's personal traits that's inside of you. Okay. That you're going through travel, which is your emotional system. Okay. There's so many body reactions of your face. Okay. So these are the basic understandings, guys. This is what you have to balance out. Body reaction is everything. Okay. To everything that we see. Okay. It's our expression, expressing ourselves emotionally. Okay. Is content on its own. Okay. So let it go and embrace it, but communicate with it. Okay. So I'm giving you a better understanding how you have to face front view. Don't see anything through fear. Don't see anything through an illusion. Just communicate with telepathy because you co-created it in the first place. So to understand that is the balance of its emotion. That emotion gives you traction. That traction gives you all levels. Okay. Now, once you get into that, everything comes to you through attraction. Nobody chases anything in any way in any formations. Okay. You'll find that out in some location, your space and time position travels, mind navigations. So setting lines of core, direct lines of communication setting, open lines of division. Now, open line division line interference is really understand how to all calculate, modify, inter-application energetic graph screens to position its operation. Okay. Setting communication graphs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now, setting track lines highest interference. What's missing in position line calculation to its picture? Okay. There's a motion line interference. You see it? Okay. You probably get this in anything you calculate. It's kind of like understanding that, can you put this picture together? You get 3 combinations, right? And it's all about putting the picture in order. Okay. What's out of order here? What's missing? What's missing in settings to complete the puzzle? Right? Does everybody see location? The top. right? The bottom, everything looks good except the top. Top is missing, right? So that's emotional line track location, right? You see how you put the pieces and puzzle together? So it's kind of like understanding your set location of voice grid lines, but you don't understand your binaries and track locations of picture frames, 3 picture frames, right? Center correlation of tracks, set position line centers, and track location high system. Okay, now everything is balance and triangulation. Okay, so it's all about understanding how to modify your line calculation setting to your systems. It's all about the simplest terms. Like I said, simplicity is the best handle on things. Getting into that track location puts you at all levels of provision. Okay, so coming into the lines of letters, communication line interference, numbers, track location lines of all line centers. Let's go to symbols and track locations in settings. Okay, letters coming into numbers, coming into symbols, and coming into shapes. Okay. Now it can be letters, numbers, shapes, or symbols, or letters, shapes, numbers, symbols. Doesn't matter. What matters is it in order for you to understand its emotional system. Everything has an awareness, and that's what's coming to you. It's consciousness on all calculation settings. To understand it, all calculated, modified through its binary and set location. Okay. All right. So getting track lines, calculating high position line centers is all about understanding 3 track locations, 2 track line connections. Now, once you get into the symbol, okay, it's in all direction. So you got to formulate calculation line stream interference and it's exactly what it's doing. Try to follow the communication lines of 6 and 9 because 6 and 9 is in center of its communication. Okay, same correlation of tracks and position. Right? It's all about understanding how to see the actual calculations. So every symbol has a formation location. Cosmic universe line screen, all calculation of tunnels or anything in the cosmic universe location system or anything through colossal, anything through tunnel in track location, you're always going to see 6 and 9. Okay, so that's 6, 9 correlation sending to travel, equals lines calculation line interference 3, line condition lines of 2 in track location line system, second lines of high interference in track locations into 3 set location triangulation. There's the binary 3, 2, 3. Okay. So then you already know that when you take the 3, 2, 3, is really understand all relation and all partnerships with letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, right? So in that track line connection to its position to its operation server locations, setting lines of 3, 2, 3, 3 zeros, 2 zeros, and 3 zeros. Okay. Now that comes into a binary, right? So communication lines of three travels, 2 travels, and 3 positions, all 3 calculations, right? So imagine this, all levels of your personality, trait, location, and face recognition, all in center of operation. Okay, all through binary. Setting position of binary in position of 1, 2, 3, 4 set locations. A travel. Okay. All through 3, 2, 3. Right. Flow. Okay, it goes into the flow of mechanism, line, condition of travel. Okay, and all set locations. Right. So once you get into that calculation line interference, you add correlations and its subtractions. Now, if it wants to get in position and change flux, the calculations of 3, 2, and 3 is going to downshift line screen. Downshift line screen and position its settings in set location. Okay. See how beautiful that is to all structural locations? Once you understand the travel, how to put your position location of your polarities, it comes in line connection to a position to its program. Okay. So it's really fascinating when you see stuff like this. So it sets lines communication to 2 panels and track locations, right? And then you set up files and set locations. Okay. Files, lines, calculation, and interference, downshift cross locations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now, it's a geometric shape, right? But what is it also in position of? Okay. What is it position of in set locations? Merkaba, right? A tesseract, a tetrahedron, a primer. It's in position of location. So track to its calculation line interference. Now it's set lines of what in set location? What is it in position of in set location now? The track location. See how I changed the image? See how it comes in modification screen settings and travel calculation point centers? Right? It's something different now, right? But it's in the same frame. Okay. So what's the binary doing is not in position or recoursing. It's a continuous flow. So it stays in its formation of balance, in its personal trait of face recognition. Okay. Now, when you correlate that calculation time position to power lines, changes positions programs, setting correlation setting in line connections of location grids and travel position lines of travel and set location. Okay. And then you have the platforms of communications. One line setting sets lines of 2 track locations. Okay. So get into that position lines of pi in direct locations, really understanding the dimensional lines of scales and balance, coordinates, levels, tractions, all calculated, modified, all through travel. Okay. So there's all different ways to create an image of zeros. Okay. The symbolism line setting line interference in tracking system has a colossal calculation setting. Okay. So there's a symbol. There's a symbol, right? There's a symbol. Okay. There's a symbol. Okay. Everything's a symbol. Everything's a letter. Everything's a number. Everything's a shape. But a symbol, it's not just a symbol. It's now a letter. Now it's a number. Now it's a shape. It's going too fast to slow down. And for you to understand that is to understand yourself through your own voice application, is to listen to your settings, listen to your vocabulary. Okay. Get into that vibration. Get into the frequencies. When Ziggy puts up formation lines on TikTok and formation line screens, she knows exactly what she. It's a repeating cycle, but it's going forward and backwards at the same time. That's the balance of polarities going one way and going the other way, directing and redirecting, right? That's all it does. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's all a binary does. It doesn't do anything else, but it's moving forward. It's not moving back. Moving back is see? You're not getting the rhythm. You're not getting the power. You're not getting the surge. You're not getting capacity. You're not getting the volume. It's clustering its correlations and intertrapplication system and all calculation line centers, right? So letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols are just a metaphorically designed calculation line to understand how to communicate to your computer frame position location to its memory and location line system, how it communicates in voice line calculations. All through its coders, decoders, defrag, and frag set locations. Okay? All through traction. Okay? All through traction. Okay? 6 and 9. Okay? So it's amazing when you come into this line connection. To understand the process is what you're doing is you're just creating a primer. Now, primer is basically understanding how to put it all together, how to put the pieces and puzzles and put all the corners together. If you get a position line track lines like this in set location, okay, let's start with this line connection. We're going to start with locations, interactions, right? All right, so each corner, okay, is setting and set location, right? Now, to understand the pieces of puzzles, people start off with the corners. Let's just start with the puzzle. Everybody's used the puzzle before. You know, you put it on the table and then you go with the corners, or you work with the inside and you go from the outside. Okay, you decide which one to do. Some people basically start in the middle. Okay, some people start at the top, right? Sometimes they go in set location, they go in this setting, or go in this setting. Okay, whatever you want to do. By putting the pieces of puzzles together is putting the primer together. Okay, and when you're putting primer together, you're putting files of data in set locations and set location line screens. Okay, and when you get into line screens calculations, you come into location grids, point centers of track locations, high position lines of travels and detection, and set locations. All right. So basically, you're taking this out of an equation and you're putting it here. Okay. It's that was. Okay. And then you put it over here. Okay. And then you put it down here. Okay. So you're moving data, files, right? All through your primer. But the primer is already set up, right? Through files. So in position location line system, it's kind of like seeing yourself through files. Okay. These are files. Okay. Files and 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 files. Files and files and files. All right. So you get it. Level, 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 level. Right. So you take the corners, you take the middle, you take the sides, you take the north, west, south, and east, put position of center. There's your primer. Okay. See, it's all about understanding how to direct and redirect a primer, how to really understand the process, how it comes together in set location. Okay. So it's really understanding how to see it not in a flat view, but a chronological view on an all-around setting. Circulation, rotation, circulation, rotation, circulation, rotation. Start to see it in that calculation, then you see the primer. There's the top of T-sheet. All right. So that's 150,000 lines of data files through a primer. Right. That's the structure. That's the image. That's the puzzle put together. When you put a puzzle together, you see it. That's the primer. Okay, so getting into that setting high interference, you have to understand how to put division line screen settings into your matrix graph calculations. So you get a box screen line connections of the cubical screen line and direct signal. It's locations, right? So cubical screen lines in a 3-track location, right? So this is where it comes really interesting in setting. Okay, understanding your course, understanding your tractions, understanding your division. Okay, all through calculations. So once you understand the provision lines, then you understand the correlation track lines when it comes in position location to its box locations. Very complicated stuff, right? So when you're given the energy line, you're giving a primer. And when you're given a primer, it's about understanding the corners. It's about understanding the center. It's all about understanding the position locations of platform, okay, on a circulation rotation. That's how you come into the primer or set connections. There's the image, okay? So I'm showing you different ways how you come into all calculations because all it is schematics of teleportation. That's all it is, okay? It's images and images and image, a structure of design. Now that comes into prime numbers, into location, setting high interference, comes into numbers, letters, shapes, and symbols. So we're going to box location, graph calculation line streams. Let's go into L. Let's go into A. Let's go into C. Let's go into D. Let's go into, get into higher information line centers. You can go into all lines of question mark. You get into 9-line settings. You can go into box. You go into triangulation. Okay. You go into symbol. Okay. You go into 3 calculations, interactions, and then you go into 1-line calculation setting. Okay. So once you get into modification lines of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, everything comes into information location of balance. Okay, through an algorithm. So the course line, track lines, highest interference. So it's the L line shape. Take 1 letter at a time. 3 correlations to tracks. L equals 3. Okay. So you set that position of box line, set it off calculation stream interference and position locations, waiting on signal. Okay. So, and then you take the A line and track locations, set a box location line centers. So it's 1, 2, 3 in position of 4. All right. So A equals lines of 4 in set location. All right. So it's all about understanding how to put the binary together. Okay. Through its primer. Okay. So it's about putting these things together, okay, through a cube at set location, okay? So once you understand that, the calculation of line settings, line interference, the connections of what you are and waiting signal comes back in traction, so it has a continuous flow. It goes above its system, so it just rotates and rotates and rotates, all right? Each line rotates its set location, okay? It rotates like a Rubik's Cube. It's like one goes this way, one goes that way, one goes this way. They're all different shapes now, Rubik's Cube. But the original one, okay, a 3, 6, and 9, is about understanding the binary to each box frame is its main frame. Okay. So I just want you to really understand and point these things out, how it comes in information location. So it's all about understanding the oscillator logics and putting everything back into what? In set lines, green, right? So in position, you're always in that information location when you come into scanning, which is red. So you really have to understand your foundation, how it works from 0 to 12. Really understand that, because what you're doing is you're picking up images in its set location to its own primer. So really understand how that all works in track locations, okay? All in the right direction, okay? So it's a continuous flow. It's an engine, right? It's a all line center interference into an electronic cube, into a calculation stream. Okay, direct same of circulation, rotation. Okay, so it's going like this, it's going like this, it's going like this, it's going like this, it's going like that. Okay, all letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. So what it's doing is creating a traffic flow, setting calculation line streams. So we start with this set locations. We start with that calculations, right? Downshift. Okay, and then we cross over, and then we up, and then we cross over. Okay. So it's always going to be in this line connections. It's always going to be Earth. It's never going to be space. So you start with the primer of the Earth in platform communication. This is the Earth side, which is the right angle. This is the left side, okay, which is the space angle. And this is the correlation traction setting location of your LCRs, which is your cerebrum. Now, the cerebral cortex calculation line interference. You take the L track, the C track, and position locations, all of us at the right track, and 3-line provision. Sets communication line screen interference. You can take the L line settings, stat position of quo, correlation line screen interference, and cerebro, and set location of setting. Teleportation. See? This image. All right, so everything has a primer, but understand the primer is understand the base. Understand the base is understand the grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres, right? Because of the set lines of communication crop circle, power generation, screen interference, cerebro, and a magnetic highway information line connections, all levels of your highway and set location. Okay? That's how it's always set up in position travels. So when you set these things up, everything comes into formation as set locations. Right? Channel streams, direct signals, pentacorrelation setting, track lines, mechanisms over power, power surge, power over pi, power over calculations, power line division, anything through track line connection to its position. It's the coordination. Longitude and latitude line high centers, right? So what is this mechanism line calculation line system? A plane. Okay. All right. So, when you get in position line centers, you're always in the center operation of everything that you do, all through graph. Okay. So you got to understand how to set up the primer. The primer basically sets everything up. So you start with the corners, you start with the center, or you start with the set location of its symbol. But the position line track line is about understanding how to get into the inventory of traffic of flow. So you can understand when you're communicating, okay, you are communicating, okay, binary, okay? When you are communicating, all binary, right? I, singularity. Singularity turns into binary. So binary equals line calculation settings. So now you got position of all line centers of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4 patterns in set location equals lines of 8. Okay, so that's 8 patterns in binary, right? So it's all about understanding how you come into retraction location system. Remember I told you that before? How you turn the zeros and ones in set locations to a shape, right? The track to its correlation setting has a 3-line provision. That's 3 calculation settings, right? 3 calculation lines of 0, 0, 0, and track location of binary. Okay? 0, 1's a correlation setting track lines, highest interference of 0 grounds into 1-line connections. Puts position lines of 3 in track locations, setting a calculation of new binary settings and line calculation line center positions operation of 3, 1, 0. Okay? So binary retraction, direct and redirect. Now we got in that process of position travel lines, but you have to understand the mechanism and line connections where it comes into letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. Because what you're creating calculation modifications is hieroglyphics. Okay, so what is hieroglyphics? What does higher mean? It's a kaleidoscope. Okay, Hieroglyphic line center locations in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sets lines calculation high appearance. What are you working with? Equal line communication line sending, 6th position of pi. Set locations in your heart through your throat. Heart, throat, heart, throat, heart, throat. Okay? So in that calculation line centers, you go into higher levels, high calculation stream interference, in set position of operation, downshift line cross screen location is setting. All through process, right? Equal correlations of balance lines in your flywheel and track locations to infinity 8. All right. So tractor's communication line interference comes in set lines and high set location of travel mechanisms. Okay, travel calculation line interference. What do we see in position line calculation of? A stealth. It's a stealth. All right, we already know what a stealth is, right? Sets calculation lines of fumes. There it is. Boom, boom, boom. Ooh-ah. There's a stealth. Okay. So studying the image lines and screen lines and high center interference is understanding the hieroglyphics and set locations. It's the kaleidoscope location line system that sets the platforms of communication setting to your cerebral cortex lines of design. Okay. Setting travel in position line calculation setting and another platform communication center lines and ground communication line position with operation in a 4-track location. That's set locations. Okay. So once you understand that, then you understand the disk and set calculation. Powerful stuff, isn't it? Once you understand that, you understand position location of sonar. Once you understand that, you understand position locations, the crop circles, and like centers of XD thousands. Look how powerful it is in set locations, all through image and set, okay, high centers. And all track location to its setting. Okay. So it's all about understanding how to set up a primer. Okay. Setting line calculations, high interference to set position your travel calculation, your tesseract. What is a tesseract? It's realms of communication. It's portals of calculation line streams. Tellers of communication. Everything is coming to you through awareness of consciousness, and you have to be aware of yourself first. That's what I'm saying. If you're not aware of your body, how are you going to be aware of everything around you that you touch? Mega multi-pass. Okay, and that's just the basic ground communication line interference. Everything that you see around you has its own personalities. Yes. Okay, so everything that you pick up is informations of you through motion. If I put this down and I pick it up, different vibration, different frequencies, different correlation, different intelligence, different foundation, different space, different time, different awareness, different consciousness, just by picking this up, putting it down, picking up, putting it down, putting it down, putting it up, picking up, putting it down, putting it down, putting it down, picking up, right? So on, off, off, on, right? Binary. Voicing grid line connection line center puts position of track lines in the virus correlating setting and track locations to what? Entrapment, mind trickery, and set lines to your emotional line connections. So if you get angry, you're happy here, and somebody comes at you and starts yelling at you, your emotional system is changed. If you put it down and pick it back up, it's furious. Okay, so you're escalating, you're high rising, your altitude screen settings and travel in your emotional line connections. That's affecting you and everything around your environment and set location. Okay, so it's very powerful. Very powerful. What you guys have to be aware of. Be aware of yourself first. I can raise this location is the best solution. Simplicity is the best handle of things. Handle. I'm handling this. Handle. If I'm not handling this, who's handling it? If I'm not in control of my body, who's in control of my body? If I'm not aware of what I'm doing, who is aware of what I'm doing? You understand? You're in control, because if you're not in control, they're in control. Because you can't find a way to keep yourself aware of your control, of something that's out of control. So every time you pick this up, you're picking up different emotions that's affecting the mind, that's putting you in trickery, communication of perception. How you connect through your intention that puts everything through its inner line calculating setting to binary that retract this location system that changes all lines of voice grid locations. Okay? Just by picking things up. And that's not even seeing. That's not even hearing. You're coming back into awareness of consciousness of everything around you. You have to be aware of yourself inside you. Okay? Quiet the mind, calms the soul. Okay? All right. So understand the primer is really understanding, because you have that quiz tomorrow. So basically, it's putting position location. Okay, it's like playing chess. It's like playing checkers. It's all about line understanding how to time jump, timely, vortex, how to understand the formation location. Your mind is nothing but a strategy. Okay, it's high calculation modifications to try to understand you through your awareness and track applications. Your emotional line track basically flips all the time, seconds on minutes, minutes on hours. So that's why you're not aware of what happens 5 minutes, because you're always focusing on emotion. You've got to get balanced with your emotional line tracks. So the track location line centers, you guys remember applications, you're good to go. But I'm talking about in verifications and line settings when you come in positions, when you pick up things, when you touch things, when you see things, when you hear things, everything changes. And you have to be aware of everything of its change, because everything around its system has its own binary. Yes. Are we on the same page now? I hope so. All right. So in that correlation setting, to break things down, okay, is understanding your calculations, your shapes, your symbols, okay, inset lines. Now, if you get in travel and communications, the lines of 2 symbols, in calculation of all lines of 3 symbols, inset locations, it's very complicated, right? So that's shapes override, shapes override, shapes over drive, shapes over hard drive, shapes over pi. Very, very high line, hieroglyphics. A hieroglyphic location is a kaleidoscope location of the looking glass communications in position location, looking in from looking out. Set calculation, high position, travel calculation, point centers when it comes into travel locations into this measure. It comes into scales and balanced communication. So it's about scaling your settings and travel, a balanced position, your polarities, and travel locations are going one way and going the opposite direction of center. Okay, it's all formation locations of face recognition. Okay, all right. So once you come in as symbols, you have to start getting position locations that it's not in one direction, it's all direction. And I see all direction, not just this direction, all direction, all direction. Okay, that's a symbol. Okay. So each symbol has a line connection settings, but the symbols can turn into shapes, letters, numbers, where it is in frequency, right? Because the thing is, our face changes every single second, every minute, every hour. And every time you change your motion, your face changes. See, that's what you guys are not aware of, because it's plasma. It's an interline calculation setting, a travel position, your motion line interference that changes your binary communication line system, all levels of application setting, all through adaptation. Okay? So being aware of your symbolism, being aware of your shapes, being aware of your letters and numbers and all calculations in your system gives you a better track locations how to really use your voicing grids through your binaries. Okay, to understand that through settings. Okay, so there's a lot of calculation of symbolisms that you have to understand. Okay, understanding in position location when you have a symbolism like this, it's allocations. So it's all about symbolisms are like this: going up the stairs, going down the stairs. Okay, so am I going up the stairs or am I going down the stairs? Right? Am I going up or am I going down? Okay, you don't know because it's going very, very fast. Right? Hemdall knows that when he's on the road. Right? Am I going up or am I going down? Okay. Am I crossing wave paths? Am I going up or am I going down? Okay. See how confusing that is? So it's all about understanding. Am I going up or am I going down? Right? See how it gets confusing? 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 That's a symbol. Very complicated, guys. And it's in all directions, seconds, minutes, hours. It's ramification, okay? So start to see it on its remote. See it from this angle, see it from this angle, see it from this angle, see it from this angle. All angles all at once. okay, through symbolism. Okay? So putting that together is understanding that each letter, number, shape, and symbol has its own identification setting. So 1 inline calculation setting has its own face. 2 calculation line center has its own face, a foundation. 3 set location line system has its own face of recognition, right? So once you understand that, then you understand if it has its own intelligence, it also has its own awareness of its own consciousness, which means everything around you has its own set position, its calculation of security. Whatever you have, awareness of consciousness of everything around you has the same thing. Has a face, has a recognition, has space, has a time, has its own universe, has its own chakra system. So we have to be aware of that. Okay? So once you understand the awareness of you, you understand the awareness of everything around you, because everything around you affects everything that you do through emotion. It affects you and affects everything in that setting that's in that set location of its mainframe to its box frame. Mainframe box frame. Okay? So this is an outline frame. Right? 2 provision cycles, calculation high interference of travel. See? Sets correlation line in a rotation setting and magnetic highway information setting to your flywheel. Direct modification lines of platforms, sending correlations of grounds, and 2 platform communication setting and travel communication. Okay? So we all have to understand how that works through a location grid and set lines of calculation of travel and settings. Okay, it's very powerful once you start to recognize your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols as awareness of its own consciousness of set location, because it has its own hardware and it has its own software and it has its own binary. Yeah, right? Which is amazing. And that's what you're coming back to. Okay, awareness of everything, of you first. And once you understand that, you understand everything around you has its own awareness of its consciousness, which is position of what? The cerebral, which is what? The communication, which is what? The collaboration, which is what? The connection. Okay? So you can align settings, highest interference, and position location you're setting. Okay? See lines, streamlines, high set location of measure. Okay, saying track lines, equal communication of its energy, stream interference. Correlate calculation, high interference, and position locations, right? So understanding what you're doing is you're putting something together, okay, through a primer. And if you look really close, you can see the intelligence, right? Now, if I open up the eyes, then you see the traction. Oh, yeah. Oh, it blinked. See? There's the intelligence. See? All through aligned centers of C, right? It's knowing how to structure the division and how to understand how to use data ports. The track to its communication line interference is understanding how to use the point systems of locations of clockings, each point center, each point center, each point center in set location. Okay, is putting everything together through face recognition. Look at that, disappeared too fast. Face recognition. Okay, all right. So once you understand that, you have a better process to understand the primer, okay, in the movie Contact, where you got thousands and thousands and thousands of pages. You know, it's interesting location and settings when you track location. When you come into provision, set calculation line settings, comes into 0, 0, so true. Location line centers of 0 equals false. Okay. So if you understand that position of point centers, you understand the point line centers, you recolor in the track location to its position, to its operation. How it comes in correlations of balance in position of pattern. Okay. So it's interesting when you look at the false line. False line is the off switch. Truth line is the on switch. Okay. How it lines its communication setting is really understand how to use the point lines of tracks in 3 set locations. Okay. So it formulates line centers. So the actual line condition is truth. What they're talking about is teleportation. And F is lines of formation. Okay, that's all it is. Nothing else. Okay, but it's all about understanding the correlations of balance. So timestamps, time streams, jumps, line, all calculations, right? Setting track interference, hypersphere locations of pi and track location. Modification screen interference, line calculations settings, line conditions of male, sets locations of female and track location. Right? So there's all different ways of looking at it, right? Through prime numbers. So everything in track location is a prime number. There's nothing off calculation. There's no positive and negative. There's nothing to talk about, but you know it's already in balance. So it doesn't matter if you do this in track locations and setting, as long as you understand you're in balance all the time in your line continuous program. Okay. Center correlations of triangulation lines, molecules, calculation line interference, high track locations, direct modification setting, high calculation position, provocation setting, traffic calculation position, point centers, line setting, high calculation settings, and molecule design line, and rotation surface. There's the image. Okay. Which is in set line conditions. Ooh-ah. See? Altering molecule. Right? Everything is a formation of awareness, guys. But what does it have that you have to understand? What do you have? What is this? What is this? What is this? It's a face of recognition. Okay? Everything has a face of recognition, which is what? Their primer. Okay? Center of operation of everything in calculation. Okay? All right. Remember, you're the intelligence. You're the operation. You're the intelligence in this center. Okay? That's the primer. But to understand the face is to put it together to its puzzle in a 4-track location, center calculation lines, or northwest, south, and east in travel calculations of point lines and center interference. Okay? So everything is a face. Everything has a face. Everything has to have a face. Everything is coming back to a face, which is what? Its own mind of its own consciousness of travel. So getting out of the travel mechanisms, you come into mind travel mechanisms. The center correlation line setting puts position of your awareness in high track locations to inception. Okay, so it's really understanding the integrations where it comes in all formation locations to its primer. Okay, so once you get into that calculation setting, it's knowing how to put the files together, how to put the pieces and puzzles together. Okay, see, in position, right? I'm giving you files and files and files and files and files, right? So there's the files, right? This is the primer. You watching? There's the primer. There it is. Boom. Done by equation. That's all it is. It's putting it together. How to put it together is through structure of design. All schematics of its image, right? Really understand how to put that all together in traction. It's all levels of scales and balance and measure. But you got to get in position of balance or your emotional system polarities, guys. If you're not understanding, right? What does that do? It goes higher. And when it goes higher, it creates this hologram. If it's in alignment of emotional line track, what happens? The body goes into reaction. Okay, it gets confused. Now, the inline cycles, high center interference of the outline cycle location system is what? Is an outbreak. Okay, so that's why your body reacts inside, that reacts everything outside of your emotion, right? So it's really interesting how our body is position of tractions, how it's connected to everything through light location. Okay, it's very powerful when you understand that, because everything that you see together is a primer. How it's put together, all through formation, right? All right, so point track line connected centers, point line center interference, teleportation, Hughes location line centers, 3-track line connections is false. Okay. And so it's really understanding the calculations of truth and false. So once you get into that position, you come into interpretation, you come into formation, right? So it's all about understanding how to put this all together. Point tracks and setting calculation line settings, in position locations, and all line center interference, set locations, high track lines, in position locations. All right. So it's really understand how to use the telegraphing, teleweaving, telecommunication settings, right? So it's all about understanding how to use the telepathy through line communication setting. What is position to your representation to your system that gets you in classifications. All right. All right. So it's all about reading signals and high calculation of settings into all calculations. Okay. Now each line has a communication line screen, direct signal location. So in position location 1, in position 2. Okay. Sets correlations of 1 and 2. Okay. Which is false. Sets locations of false equals location of true in 2-track locations because it's security line, right? So teleportation equals line security in set locations, right? Travel position lines is systematic line screen. So we have position of false into position of 1, 3, and 5 in set locations. And we have truth calculation of 0, colored in line calculation of points set in line 1. Okay. So this is a primer, but you have to put it together. Okay. So in track location line interference is 1 in position of 1 in position of 1. 3 track line connections. Right? So remember, is the false line comes into truth, which is truth equals lines of teleportation. Okay. So once you get into that information, then you understand what it means when you come into the prime numbers and the high calculation line system of odd and even, positive and negative, anything location you're setting to your surge. But it's really understanding how to put yourself together, really understand the coloration, the lights and travel, what your binary is doing. Is it going from this setting to this setting? Or is it going from this setting to this setting to this setting? Or is it going from this setting to this setting to this setting? Okay. You see the difference between the travel lines and screens and location, your binaries? How it has massive pi in the set location. Sets 1, 2, and 3. Sets 1 and 2 and 1, right? So that's 2, okay? Okay, over 1. Okay, so we take the 2, sets position, over 1, sets position, right? So we color in the 2 and in position locations. Now, it's a half line signal, right? So we color in the half line in track location. It's very complicated if you don't understand the mechanism and line set location you're setting to travel. But I'm just showing exactly how it formulates lines of 2 0 lines in set location of 2 line communications. When you color it in, it comes into a rhythm pattern. And when it comes in a rhythm pattern, it comes into coloration. So that's understanding how to use yourself through your own matrix of design. Matrix is color. Snowy graph is black and white. Okay? So in position locations, it comes in tractions. This is security line division, 2 track locations. Colored in red, right? So snowy graph interference and 1 line signal, half line change, 3 track locations, 0 line calculation high centers, right? So in position locations comes in what in calculations? True, false, true. Okay. So the correlate calculation line interference, teleportation line screen interference, change positions back into green. Set locations in green. Sets communication in red. And set locations. Okay. So there's always different ways of using your oscillogics. Now you can do it through letters, numbers, shapes, or symbols. Okay. Or you can do it through anything through frame. But to recognize your system, start off with the true and false. Okay. Watch contact. Then you understand what I'm talking about. All right. But that's how you come in position of travel lines. So your energy comes to you in track locations. So it's a truth measure and scales of balance. And then it's a false lines into high calculation setting into a virus location. So you need a positive and negative, okay? Truth and position of false, positive, negative, all right? So that's what it is, okay? But it's really interesting when you understand location, how it's all set up in traction, okay? Complicated, right? So this gives you another lines of formations of equation. So that's how you can basically set up your calculations to get into your parameters. Okay, so when you get a position of travel lines and directed signals, I'll show you in calculation position of point centers. So let's get into line calculations lines in infinity position of the purple. Box location settings and travel. In position location, start with that calculations, right? But there's an airline connections gap setting in travel calculation of point centers in the center. All right. So understanding position is understanding the patterns, 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 and all set location. Okay. So once you understand that, then you come into the webbing system and set locations. Right. So once you get into that calculation line system, the actual circulation and the rotation comes together in correlation. Okay, so when that comes in settings, let's go back in black, line calculation, you can actually see the design that you did in set location, right? So the center operation of U is to break it down, right? Set positions, calculation lines, and circulation rotations. All right, so now you got truth, you got false, and you got truth. All right, so that correlates calculation line interference. Remember, the 4-line correlation setting, so that's 4 zeros. Calculation line interference at 3 zeros. All right, so we got 1/2 and 1/3 in set locations colored in. Very complicated, right? Truth and false, okay? So it's really understanding how it equalizes correlations of tracks, guys, okay? Now, false narratives, truth narrative, false narrative, okay? So formulations of false is point lines of 0, okay? Split the anomalies, half track location. Okay, the color red line screens, snowy graph interference, right? So remember, it's nothing positive or negative. I'm just showing you a structure, how you get a primer. All right, so in position location of false is the opposite sign line conditions. So if it's in direct locations of color on this side, you do it on the other side. So it formulates the balance in set locations. One-way tractions to the other track location. So it evens out. Okay, so that balance lines the core line track lines in the line set in high interference in your mechanism location of travel and position of operation. Okay. Okay. And you do it all through a box frame, guys, a box frame in position locations. Okay. And then when you come in and track communication line settings, you come into box frames. Okay. And then you come into main frames. Okay, main frame, box frame. Okay, main frame, box frame. Okay, so in that calculating high interference, you come in position locations and setting. Okay, to a cube. That's that design, right? Platitude communication line interference. Remember, it's a circulation, rotation, and traffic flow, letters, numbers, shape, and symbols. So once you understand how to modify the truth narrative and the false narratives, you get a better balanced communication of what you're doing through teleportation of formation and also the conditions. Okay. So I'm just showing you exactly how to set up position locations to get in your communications of your primers. Okay. So there's all different ways of communications, guys. How to set up position. Okay. Through the truth narrative and the false narratives. Okay. Prime numbers. Okay, coming in calculation, independent position, travel calculation, point centers, which is all symbolism, right? Because it's never in one direction, it's all direction. So if you understand all direction, the center operation of U is the primer, which is space recognition. And that's what you're doing, is you're putting that together. And when you put it together, you come into the hieroglyphics of its story, of its frame, of its reality, to its ancestry and its history, of its celestial locations and travel mechanisms, and set connections. Okay? So how does everybody feel about that? More complicated? coming in the truth narratives and the false narratives. Watch contact again. Okay? So you get a better understanding how that all works, right? So I really want you to focus on the truth narrative and the position of the false narrative, because you guys are not ready through teleportation information yet, because you don't understand yourself through primer. Okay? So everybody understand that position of the program, how it sets lines of communication, your settings, and travel? So everybody understand that process now, right? Okay. So it's all about you through intent. How you set your tone. Is it a positive narrative or is it a negative narrative? Is it a truth narrative or is it a false narrative? Okay. So it all depends on you through travel. But I'm just showing you it gets more complicated when you get to higher levels of set locations in the mind. Okay, all through set locations of settings. Okay. All right. So you're just coming into your line setting location to your image, location of face recognition. Right? Now, if you get in position line centers, really gets really into location setting and travels. So you get into truth, get into false, you get into truth, truth, false, you get in position of truth, you get position of truth. You just formulate calculation around the calculation line stream interference. You know exactly what you're doing in location setting and travel calculations. Right? Truth, narrative, false narrative. Okay? So it's putting the positive and negatives together to create the structure. That's all it is. That's all it is. But you need the positive and negative to create the surge. It's really powerful when you understand what's going on with your binary. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Binary, proton, and neutron, right? What is the proton? What is the neutron? What is electron, right? So you have to understand that. That's interest location. Let's go through that equation. All right. So you got a binary, communication lines of 0. Okay. And you got calculation lines, a high position and travel calculation line system into all line center locations. Okay. Into neutron. Neutron calculation line interference is set location is what? 1 position. Okay. Sets calculation line interference of proton. Okay. It's calculation line interference of 0 calculations. Right. So that's 1 over pi in position travel. Okay. Now, in that calculation line interference, 1 is triplication of truth, and position line, center line, conditional levels in position locations in proton is false. True equals lines of false narrative calculation stream. Okay. And the calculation to the electron. The electron is the positive and the negative put together, which formulates set lines of high center interference of travel, which is yin and yang in position of its program. Okay. So it's a positive, it's the negative. Okay. So in position location, it's all about understanding to change the coloration of your binaries to understand location of binary and all levels of retraction. To really understand what you're doing is you're structuring your schematics of a primer to put it all together through the puzzle. You have to have a positive and negative to put everything together. And that's where it comes into truth narrative and false narrative. So how you use yourself through binary and how you use yourself through protons and neutrons and electron is affirmations of you through motion, through intent, okay? All through calculations, all right? So, you know, when you get into number line sequence and position line centers, high position calculation position programs, it's really understanding how to put that all together, because you're all correlate calculation line stream and interference and traffication lines A equals lines of E, Adam and Eve. Okay, you're all formations of Adam and Eve. Okay, you're all atoms, you're all electrons. We're all the same. There's no difference. We're all the same of yin and yang. Okay. Yin, yang, woo! Okay? Does everybody understand the process now? How this all works? How to get yourself together, understanding the truth narrative and understanding the false narrative? Okay? So all you're doing is you're structuring yourself, putting a position locations together through a structure of its design of schematics into an image. But you need the positive and negative to create the system, which is what? Teleportation of its formation. Okay? So you're not ready yet. Okay? You're into the truth narrative and the false narrative. Okay? Now this puts position lines of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols through the same thing. Okay? Now we have to really get into correlation line settings, understand position of graph calculation lines of prime numbers. Not all calculation and settings, right? How many times does it set position remember in contact where it's going do, 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 pausing, do, right? So that's one, that's three. The next one's two, do, 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 do. Next one's four, do. Next one's one. Pay attention. That's how it works. All right, so it's understanding your position of what you're doing when you are listening. Okay, really, really listening to yourself inside. Okay, because it's all connected to your ears, right? Through the right and through the left. Okay, so you're always starting in position and setting, okay, which is the right line. And then you cross over. Okay, so what is that position? Set lines to the right, cross over to the left. Right? You see what I'm doing? This is the right, cross over to the left, up, and go across and down, which is what? What is it? Intra-applications when you come into that setting. What is it? Provision of square. Square equals root. Okay? E equals MC squared. Okay? So your actual face is the square root of a primer. Oh my gosh, multi-pass. So everything has to come together to center the primer through truth narrative and false narrative. Okay? There you go. Hold on a sec. Hello.
Hola, amigo.
Hello.
Agua.
Sí. Yep. Now.
Sí.
Sí. There you go.
Okay.
Gracias.
¿Garrafón?
Sí.
¿No tiene?
No.
Envase.
Oh yeah.
Ah, sí.
See. I thought it was already there.
Bien, bien.
I thought it was already there.
Ah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Sí.
That's good.
Gracias. That's good. All right. So, me brushing up on my Espanol, you know. You have no other choice wherever you are. So that also too is a primer. Trying to understand Mexico and everything around it is everything inside it. Okay, so we all have to understand how we're all connected to ourselves now, how to really get into that setting through square root, which is our pi, right? See? It's really interesting when you actually look at yourself and really understand the position location where you are. As locations, right? How you see yourself through your truth, how you see yourself through your false, how you see yourself through your false, and how you see yourself through your truth. Okay? 3-track provision lines, teleportation, stream interference, 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3 says location. Sets calculation line interference of false, so it's 1 and 2, in position 3, 4, and 5. Now, it doesn't have to travel through all lines of communication. Where are you in an emotional line, track line? You can be just being a 4 provision of square root. It doesn't matter. What matters, do you understand the frequency that you're reaching in position of travel? So you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all right? So that's 5 lines, zeros in set location. 3 over 5, right? So in position, all levels, truth narrative is 1 line signal. Position lines calculation of 5 lines of 0 location is 1 and position location of 5 line signal. Okay, So truth narrative, false narrative. All right. So I had a false narrative calculation 1, 2. I only traveled through 3. Okay. So I didn't travel through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because I didn't see that through frequency. So it sets lines of 3 zeros in set locations, right? Which is one line signal in position, right? 2 lines in one line. All right. That's false narrative. Sets lines of truth. So that's 1, 2. Only travel through 2, right? Not through 3. So that's 1, 2. So I color it both 2 because it's all lines of truth narrative. That's how it formulates location to a primer. Now, when you guys get your center lines of communication system, you understand it through its schematics, how it sets lines of all communication to its operation. All through square roots, a pi, a generation line screen high interference in position to its operation system of all set location of face recognition. Okay? Hoo-ah. All right. That's it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give myself 5-10 minutes and set locations, and I'll come back on. We'll do a Q&A on live. Bye-bye.